And Joe, what's your title here?
I am, you know what, Director of the Grand is good enough for me.
Director of the Grand.
Director of the Grand. The business title's too long.
Okay. You want to bore the audience
That's
with
right.
business stuff.
In a normal non-COVID year, there are about 100 performances a year, and I curate about half of them, including the educational performances with some staff input. And then there are renters who come in and find their way through. We're also the home of 2 of the high school's musicals.
Oh, wonderful.
And the Oshkosh Symphony and the Oshkosh Community Players are resident companies here. So it's very much a community-based touring house. Grand was built in 1883. It's the oldest theater in Wisconsin. And when I give tours to kids, I point out that in 1883, there was no Eiffel Tower, there was no hamburger, there was no Coca-Cola. The telephone was new, the kind that hung on the wall.
Wow.
And among the artists who played here in the early days were John Philip Sousa, Mark Twain, the Marx Brothers, Caruso sang here, and Bernhardt did Shakespeare here. So the theater has a real rich history.
Yeah. We chatted a little bit last night, Joe, about a ghost that may be residing here.
Well, the theater's 137 years old, so of course there are a lot of stories about ghosts. There are actually 4 or 5 ghosts. Perhaps Jackie will find one because one of them is a dog. Oh. So if she starts acting weird, it's because she's hearing the dog barking.
Oh my goodness.
There are also, there's a longtime stagehand who is alleged to keep an eye on the theater. And in the basement, there's a mischievous, probably teen or maybe preteen boy who met an untimely end in the basement and still finds his way through and visits with people. I have staff people who have talked to him.
Why is it always in the basement? Oh, creepy.
And there's, in the balcony, one of the more famous spirits of the Grand sits up there in her Victorian garb with her program for the Bohemian Girl, which is the opera that opened the Grand in August of 1883. And she's up there waiting for the show to start. And the most fun story that goes along with that is back in the 80s when the theater reopened, someone commended the staff on the reenactors we had in the theater of the 1880s. And of course there were no reenactors, so I think maybe they ran into rows in the balcony waiting for the show to start. So we have a good time. So this is the haunted dressing room.
Okay.
So we do one of our presentations in this room. And there are 2 stories that are kind of fun about this. One is that years ago we had a Native American dance troupe come to the theater, and it was a very large group. And as you've seen just in these few moments, there's not a lot of room down here, so they were taking every square inch for their prep space. Their leader was right about where Mr. Goessl is right now. He stopped at that doorway, closed the door, and said, "We're not going to use this room." This is the largest of the dressing rooms and the most central, but they squeezed into all the other dressing rooms because too much was going on in this room.
Wow.
So the second story that I thought was funny was during the first year that we did the Spirits of the Grand tours. This is one of the key rooms because of that story and others. So I had an actor in here telling stories, and including that one. And the last night of the first year, I got a call from the staff on duty that there was a kind of an unusual man in the crowd. He had one of those flat brimmed hats, like the original Billy Jack movie kind of thing, and so I introduced myself, and he said, "Well, can you tell me, will we be going to the coal bin?" And I said, "Well, the coal bin, it's not a coal bin anymore. It's a dressing room." And he's like, "No, I just want to know because I'd like to. There was a boy buried in that coal bin." And I said, "I know. He's one of the spirits we talk about." And he he explained to me, he said, in the terms that I would understand, he was a Native American medicine man. And he had heard the stories about the ghosts, and he wanted to see for himself. So he was going to take the tour. And he asked permission to, he had a pouch with tobacco in it, sacred, blessed tobacco or whatever, and he explained to me that when you come across a spirit, you leave just a little bit there, and that lets them know that you're not there to harm them, you're there just, and I said, well, it's a little tobacco, that's not gonna hurt, well, that's fine. So I walked the tour with him, and every once in a while they'd be doing something, and he'd be looking somewhere completely different. One time he kind of went, I looked, so, but at the end he wanted to come down and see the coal bin. I said, well, I gotta talk to the actors, and because they're down there changing and stuff afterwards. So I asked them, and they were like, oh, that guy, yeah, but the only, he can only come down if he tells us what he saw. So we sat down here and we talked about it for a while, and at one point we were in this room talking about it, and the actress who was doing the presentation said, I was acting my fool head off here, and I couldn't get your attention. What was up with that? And he said, didn't you see them? She said, see what? She said, what? In these mirrors. He said, there were 3 or 4 faces in each mirror, and they were watching your presentation, and they were really enjoying your little show.
Oh my goodness.
So, that's where ghost stories. Yeah, that's where ghost stories are great, because I have, as I said to you earlier, we have high school kids, doing their shows down here, and of course they're always insisting that they're looking in a mirror and they see something behind them and they turn and there's nothing there. Well, if you look in a mirror, you see yourself in the other mirror. Right. So there's always a perfectly good explanation, but the theatrical ghost stories are so much better to tell.
What's going on with you? What?
I wondered where you went. I thought you went off exploring by yourself, Jackie. I was going to be really impressed. You hear the dog?
She was just right here with her tail down.
Yeah,
and just
you hear
like
the dog
very
barking?
sensitive to ghosts, aren't you? Yes, you know where all the ghosts are.
Well, wait, the stories I have about the young boy are kind of fun and a little oddball. One of them is that, you get from one side of the other of the stage, down those stairs we came down, but you have to go up this spiral staircase to get up. And at some point, again, this was before my time, it was alleged that a young boy was running up the stairs and tripped and lost his footing and started to fall back, but something caught him and put him back onto his feet down the stairs. So
Well, that's a very
he
nice
is. There are no evil spirits.
Oh, good.
In the ground. However, this boy is certainly a mischievous one. Whoops. Okay. Years ago, I had a friend, a colleague, a professional woman, who explained to me that she felt an affinity for the spiritual, and she wanted to come down and see the Grand on her own at some point. And when I let her roam the basement, I said, sure, why not? And so you can't tell from here, but beyond here are the stairs upstairs. So I brought her down, and I said, I'll just go sit at the top of the stairs. If you need me, just yell. So I went up to the top of the stairs, sat down, and about 2 minutes later, I heard this scream. It wasn't a terrified scream, it was an annoyed scream. So I came running down the stairs, and this very professional, youngish woman was cursing. You little son of a... Well, it turns out that this teenage boy had seen a pretty young woman and decided to explore.
Oh.
So he let his hands do the walking a little bit.
Oh my
And
goodness.
she was very annoyed with him. He was very fresh.
Oh.
So
How do you slap a fresh
you just yell at him, I guess. So, but this is where the area we're in right now was actually a retail section of the theater. There was an exterior staircase where you can see the little cinder blocks back there behind the door. You actually go up to the street, and this was it served a purpose as retail space. Probably was a space during Prohibition too. Theaters, have those disreputable actors and performers. So chances are this was a hub. Oshkosh was a city with a lot of underground tunnels and things. And across the street, where the bank stands opposite us right now, was a beautiful old hotel called the Athearn. And allegedly there was a tunnel between the Athearn and the Grand.
Oh my God.
For the actresses to find their way to the Grand without being, accosted, and also for the men to put their wives in seats and then find their way back to the hotel where there was bar and show up afterwards. It's funny because that was such a long time ago and so much construction. I found no traces of it. But for every person who tells me no, that's not true, there's someone who says, "Oh yeah, my uncle was down there." So I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of underground stuff in Oshkosh, and if the tunnel was still here, it'd come up probably in the bank vault, and that would probably be pretty cool for me. But I haven't seen it. So we moved the offices across the street and built this lounge.
Oh, cool. Oh, I love it.
And in a normal, non-COVID thing, this is where we'll have for our donor meetings. And after the shows, we will actually have a small stage that we put in the corner for after-glow kinds of things. So this is where fun. You saw the view from the stage.
Yeah.
This photo is about 100 plus years old. It's the same view, but now you've heard my COVID capacity is 230. The theater's real capacity is 550. This photograph, the capacity was over 1,000.
I was gonna.
The walls are in the same place. They're in benches in the balcony, crammed up. There's a little wedding party up in the corner. I don't really know how they did it, but it was just before, there was a very famous fire, maybe you've heard of it, called at the Iroquois Theater in Chicago.
Yeah.
And after that, fire codes came into play, including crash bars that were invented because of a theater disaster. And so that's when the capacity went, at that point, from 1,100 to 660, which is where it sat before we made the next renovation. You're going to see they knocked the capacity down.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So basically, we got a bar, we got more restrooms, and we got a place for before and after the shows. Basically, if you were over 5'5", you were putting your knee in someone's head.
Oh,
And it doesn't matter that Broadway houses are like that too now, you just didn't want it. So what I did was I took out every other row, leveled it off, and these are called suite seats. And they come, in non-COVID days, we have servers. In the suite seats, you can order your drink and it'll get brought to you. And order your drink for admission and it'll get brought to you.
Amazing.
And you get light. And
And a little table.
yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So
Taking a photo of that.
yeah, when I presented it to our board, I said this is either a really good idea or a really terrible idea, and I'm not going to know until we do it.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, it was a really good idea.
Oh, people pay. People will pay.
They do. So these turned into the premium seats in the house.
I'll bet.
Look at that light on stage right now, acting up for you.
Yeah, what's up with that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Did you catch it? We actually have a rental rate for paranormal people who want to stay overnight. And we'll babysit the lobby and they can do what they want to do. And they come up with some interesting stories. I always wanted to kind of like mess around with them a little bit, but I didn't. Rose's seat is right here. So, people have supposedly sat on her lap and inadvertently and jumped up. But
Wow.
yeah, you should check out Spirits of the Grand. There are on our Facebook page. There are photos.
Oh, wow.
In fact, there are photos of all the renovations too. They're fascinating. But like Facebook, you got to dig back do a million albums to find them.
Sure.
In 2009, we were closed for 18 months. The rafters in the ceiling were, they discovered they were not renovated and were giving way. The ceiling was in danger of falling.
Oh.
So they condemned us. I had a show that night. We moved 22 shows that spring.
Oh.
And it took a year and a half to get it fixed. But everything from Shakespeare to the back wall and from the flower pots to the flower pots went away.
Wow.
And we had to redo the whole thing. And I climbed the scaffold every day to give an update, you know, and that sort of thing. And when it was over, Jeff Daniels came and reopened the theater for us.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've had a lot of creative ideas on how to continue the arts and getting people engaged. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Well, certainly we're trying to keep our feet moving. We had talked about it a little bit before it all shook down. So within a week of closing in March, we went online with a channel that we call The Grand at Home. The show must go online.
Yes.
We have done weekly events, and we've settled now into a routine where on Thursday nights I will, as you can see with my audience here, I do a podcast, answer questions, and give any news updates and things on what's going on. Friday nights we do cocktail hour, which you know all about,
sure.
with artists and friends, and on Saturdays we do performances. So we're building an online presence, and I think coming out of this, we're probably going to continue. We're really looking heavily into streaming technology so that if I cut my capacity to 200, which I will, that maybe we have a streaming option, pay-per-view for all of our shows as well, so that people who aren't ready to come out yet can still tune in from home. We have a good time with this. We've weaved it all into a presentation in October called The Spirits of the Grand, and we take people through the basement and the haunted areas. This year we're going to go online with it. It's going to look a little like Blair Witch, I think. We're going to follow people through. We've got interactive. It's kind of like Renaissance Fair meets ghost stories.
Yeah.
There are interactive characters. Some of them leading the way. Some of them playing historical and paranormal characters from the Grand. And we figure the stories are all true. At least they are in the way they were told to me.
Sure. And is this going to be on the same YouTube channel that you were talking about? Can you say that channel one more time?
It's called The Grand at Home.
All right, you should see that at the bottom of your screen right now. The Grand at Home. They're on YouTube. Check it out. Joe, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.